Welcome back to the fourth segment of chapter 3. And we're going to talk, it's not going to be a long segment. We're going to talk for a few minutes about political savvy. And the authors define it as the ability to effectively understand others at work and to use such knowledge to influence others to act in ways that enhance one's personal or organizational objectives. Pretty straightforward. Political savvy. And I guess I've never heard it phrased kind of like that, but as you read through that portion of the text, it does make sense the way they've got it, phrased and defined, and the way they lay it out in the text. And they talk about building and maintaining good relationships, and we went over this earlier on in this chapter, but if you think about it, at least from my experience, you've got peers, and then you win a health plan, peers that you need to work with them, especially if you're doing payment integrity type work and trying to ensure that the claims are paying correctly and providers aren't billing fraudulently, or they're billing for the services that were provided. So, and you find I find my peer group being network management, medical management, IT, operations, legal, risk management. Those are kind of the peers that I work with. And for the most part, in most health plans, if everybody's at a certain level, manager, director, vice president, if everybody's pulling in the same direction and pulling together, the corporation is usually in sound financial shape and in doing a great job. So you want to make sure that you're, with your peers, you're all in sync. And then you think about customers and clients, and my customers, for the most part, when I was at HealthNet, we talked, the clients were mostly VA and Department of Defense, because we did a lot of work in that, TRICARE environment and the VA environment, providing, healthcare services to those populations. When I worked at United, it was Medicare population. So the different clients, different customers, you want to build relationships, because as you build relationships with your customers and clients, it's the ease that you find in doing day-to-day business, just the day-to-day operations, and building the expectations and managing those expectations may be as important as anything in these relationships. It helps you manage expectations. You've got suppliers, and that Blue Cross Blue Shield, my suppliers were the vendors that I used to help provide resources that I didn't have on the internal team. So in payment integrity, you've got some IT resources, you've got some vendors out there providing expertise to evaluate claims that work with your internal teams. And it's extremely valuable to manage those vendors, because the more that they can supplement or complement your internal resources, it just makes your team as a whole more productive. And then lastly, it's your superiors. It's, CEO, CFO, COO, senior management team. You want to make sure you can help manage their expectations and get their buy-in, because they're the ones that are going to be making the decisions on, if you go in and then pitch it to the CFO and you think, I can get you this financial goal if I had 6 additional FTEs. And so he or she they're the ones you're going to have to convince to get those 6 FTEs, and that you can get that return on investment that they're looking for. So that's extremely important. Managing your budget, getting additional budget dollars and resources, it's extremely important to help manage those expectations on the senior management team. And then they go in, the text goes into, I don't know, there was 3 or 4, I don't know if you want to call them traits, but kind of skill sets that you would expect somebody that's politically savvy to have. And one was social awareness. And I'm sure you've all worked at, if you've been out in the workforce, you've probably had the opportunity to observe individuals that can kind of work the audience, kind of work the group. They observe others in the social setting. They see how others view themselves, and they see who the players are. They determine, who they need to build the longer lasting relationships, or if you're politically savvy, you can identify those that may help you more down the road than others. And then the second one is the interpersonal influence, and it's a persuasive way of achieving interpersonal influence. And there's two major ways. And it depends on your leadership style, and it depends on the leadership style of the individuals that you're trying to influence or trying to help manage expectations. There's either quid pro quo, that it's pretty definitive. It's cut and dried. It's here's what I need, and if you can help me get what I need, I'll help you get what you need. And then there's the ingratiation. So it's kind of like working people trying to you hear people on TV in Washington or in the movies or read it in fiction novels. They talk about, collecting chits that you'll be able to call in the future somewhere along the way, especially in government. So then you hear it a lot when you hear the talking about the votes in the Senate and the votes in the representative, both at federal and state government, and how they're ingratiating themselves. And it's kind of like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So it kind of falls into these interpersonal influences, kind of falls into the two kind of main, either quid pro quo or trying to ingratiate. And then you've got, they talk about networking and political savvy, and they go hand in hand. If you can't manage the expectations yourself as a leader, maybe you identify, they talk in the text, the authors talk about brokers, individuals that can broker those relationships for you, help you secure resources outside of your personal control. It's the difference between, and they get into the difference between strong and weak ties, or strong and weak relationships, and you need both of them. You need both of those, deep relationships and friendships versus acquaintances. And those, the way they differentiate between, the strong and weak ties. But again, at the end of the day, you need both of them, are important if you're trying to build connections, gather information that can help your team succeed within the corporate organizational structure. And then lastly, they talk about apparent sincerity. And I like the way they say apparent was the key word or the key phrase. You want anybody's politically savvy, you want them to be trustworthy and you want to be transparent. You don't want any BS and always having to look over your shoulder to see if they're going to stab you in the back somewhere along the way. And you certainly don't want to, as if you're trying to be, maximize your ability to be politically savvy, you don't want to come across as being manipulative or insincere. And then lastly, somewhere right at the end of the text, they talk about, and here's how you're going to tie, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, tying them together. They talk about there's definite connections between leader traits and characteristics and political savvy. And that's the way they kind of wind the text up and position you to start on chapter 4 will be our next round of videos. So that's going to wind it up on chapter 3. Hope you've enjoyed it. And the next time you hear me, I will be jumping into chapter 4. Talk to everybody soon. Thank you.